Hi everyone, I am Aishwarya Saran, and it's so great to be here with you all tonight. And I'm really excited to host this session, which is part of our With Purpose series. And it's an absolute honor to have conversations and dive into topics like leadership, learning, and innovation. And we are incredibly honored to have Tomissa with us, who is Senior Commercial Capability Director at Kellanova. Tomissa is a seasoned leader with over 30 years of experience in CPG industry, who specializes in capability building, learning development, and transformational leadership. Her experience spans around cross-functional leadership, change management, and leveraging AI in shaping future of leadership. We are truly honored to have you here, Tomissa. And Tomissa, we would love if you could introduce yourself to our audience today.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Aishwarya, it is a thrill to actually be here and, communicate and talk to everyone. Just really privileged to be here today. So thank you for that. So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I have grown up in the CPG industry and worked for the company for 35 years, and the same company, if you can believe it. But I have had the opportunity to move around into different functions and get different experiences from all over, from supply chain, retail sales finance, HR, just to name a few. But it's really given me the opportunity to be able to really see the company more holistically, having worked in so many different functions. And now I'm able to really help the organization solve business problems. And I'm in a position where I'm able to do that. As well, I'm able to really help develop our leaders, our next generation, and I absolutely love that.
That's so great to hear, Tomissa. So without any further ado, I'll get into my first question for you, which is we can see that you have an impressive 30 years career in CPG with a clear passion for building capabilities across multiple function businesses. And as well as multiple business functions. So what inspires you to make capability building and continuous learning the foundation of your career?
Yeah, so I think honestly, it just kind of fell into place. I've worked in so many different functions, and one of the common threads throughout every function that I've been in was I really love the training piece of it. So anytime I had the opportunity to step in or, volunteer to train a group, I would, and that just became my passion. And so for me, around developing, our organization and our people, that's what I love, and that's where the inspiration really came from. It was just all the different experiences that I had and being able to, really develop people. That became my passion.
That's so great to hear. And considering that you have to interact with so many people and so many stakeholders, so how do you engage stakeholders to ensure alignment and support for large-scale change initiatives especially? So it would be really helpful for us if you could, share your experience or example or approach which has proven successful for you.
Yeah, so I have a great example I would love to share around change and really helping to develop our organization. So I'll give you a little bit of background here. A couple years ago, it was in June, and I was in New York, and we were getting ready to kick off an omni-channel leadership program with executives. And that morning, we were all fired up. A number of people I work with thought, let's go out for a morning run to really get the morning going. I got back to my hotel room, and it was pretty early still in the morning, around 6:30. And I got a call from my boss. And I thought, okay, this is interesting because it's so early in the morning. And I knew something was probably going on. And as I was talking to him, he said, look, I want you to get, all the team that's there together, because we are getting ready to communicate the biggest change our company has ever gone through in 116 years with the Kellogg Company. And so I was trying to digest everything that he was telling me around the news that was going to break. And what ended up happening is we ended up splitting up the company into two businesses. So one was our cereal business and another was our global snacking business. And so throughout the day, you can imagine, just put yourself in people's shoes. You can imagine how they were feeling. Some were really excited about the change. Others were really nervous because it was going to be a full year of transition before we really knew what company we might be placed with, if we had a job, what role we would be in. And so during that change, the first thing I thought about was, okay, I have a smaller team and we're not going to be able to go out and train everyone, but we wanted to upskill the organization. And so I needed an approach that would be scalable and that would be engaging to upskill everyone in the organization, in our commercial organization, so they could feel really confident no matter what role they were going to land in. We wanted to make sure that they had the functional capabilities that they needed, leadership capabilities, how to progress through change, how to lead people through change. And so I made one call to a company that I had had some experience with in the past, and it was Tiger Hall. It was a social learning platform that we could leverage. And it had all of these wonderful opportunities between functional training, leadership training, hearing from real world leaders all over the globe on all different topics, whether it was a change that they've taken their organization through, well-being, all of these different topics. And it was amazing to be able to roll that out and build learning trails specific for our organization. So we had internal content, external content, and it was just a way for the organization to upskill themselves. So it kind of was awesome because it's learning where you want. And this platform was totally optional. So you could have that growth mindset if you wanted to upskill yourself during this whole transition. And you want to know the coolest thing about it? We had a 74% adoption rate in our commercial organization. Unbelievable. So that tells me people have a growth mindset and they want to continue to learn. And I think, being able to have a large scale transformation, look, so many people are going through a lot of change right now with our disruptive, world that we live in. Making sure that you continue to invest in yourself should be priority.
Perfect. And I totally agree with you when we talk about the mindset part of it, because now all of us are global citizens. So subsequently, we need to have that global approach, which brings me to my next question. So can you share an example where fostering an international learner's mindset has led to a measurable outcomes within your organization?
Yeah, so honestly, like the example that I just gave around Tiger Hall, having a 74% adoption rate on a platform that's totally optional, that was record breaking when you think about just the industry as a whole. You don't get adoption rates like that. They're in the low, 20s, if that, around an adoption rate. So I felt so proud of our organization, our leaders for embracing this, and then everyone for having that growth mindset, because at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that everyone was able to learn, grow, and thrive. And so no matter what role they were going to end up in, having that growth mindset was incredibly important.
Indeed, and we can see that Tiger Hall had such a strong adoption rate. So, and with such adoption rate and hunger for upskilling, which you must have observed, so how do you sustain the momentum and ensure that the learning from such platforms translates into impactful business outcomes?
Oh gosh. Okay, so Aishwarya, that is a great question. You need to make sure that the content is evergreen and it's continually changing and you're adding new content, because just as things change, you need to evolve and change as well. And your content needs to change and get updated, based on everything going on around us. And so my team's done a fantastic job of developing content and making sure that that content's available. As well, this platform that we leverage is every single day updating content. So they have what's called Thinkfluencers that are global Thinkfluencers all over that develop content. And so the cool thing is that you can really learn from real world leaders that have experienced things, and they tell you they're so authentic, like what worked well, what didn't work well. And so sharing the best practices, that is so incredibly critical, because we can all learn from each other. I like to say it's not know-it-all, it's learn-it-all.
Perfect. And talking of influencers and thought leaders, so as a thought leader in AI, how do you see generative AI transforming the landscape of learning and development? And are there any AI-driven strategies or tools which you must have implemented recently that enhanced your learning outcomes?
Oh yeah, so I've got a few of these. This is great. So my thing around AI is, look, don't shy away from it, experiment with it, because we can all continue to progress. And there are going to be times when, we have to have the human knowledge that AI may not have. But don't shy away from it, jump in and leverage it. And so first, let me just say, any of us can experiment with AI. You have to understand certainly your company policies on, what you can get into, so you make sure that you keep your company protected. I'll give you an example. One thing that I like to leverage on my personal mobile device is ChatGPT. And so, any of you can get in and be able to leverage that. Here's a great way to start. If you've never started to leverage AI like this before, get into ChatGPT on your own personal device, and you can do something as simple as create a LinkedIn post. So maybe after this fireside chat, you take a couple of the learnings and you put that into ChatGPT. It's the prompts that you give them. You simply say, I want to create a LinkedIn post, help me with it. Here are the couple things I learned from the fireside chat that I want to share with my LinkedIn family. And it will literally craft a message within seconds for you. Now you got to look it over and make sure it sounds all great, but then you can leverage that for your LinkedIn post. And it's just a wonderful way for you to be able to leverage the technology instead of sitting here and thinking for 15 minutes, like, what should I exactly say? It can do that work for you. Yes, you do have to look it over and make sure it's in your own words, but it's a great example to leverage technology. And here's the thing, we can all continue to learn from each other. So literally, they could tag you and I in the LinkedIn post, and then we can see and share, learnings from one another. That's just one way. So another way that we have within our company have leveraged AI is we have implemented virtual reality for our retail sales new hires. So you can imagine coming in, you've started a new job with Kellanova, and we're going to bring our retail sales in for a whole week of training, and we get them immersed into the headsets where they learn our store call process. And so it's a really cool gamified way to learn, and it's immersive. So the cool thing is hey, there's no multitasking going on during this training. You are immersed and you're learning, and it's awesome. So that's just an example of how we've embraced technology to really help develop our people.
That sounds really interesting to myself. And for organizations looking to incorporate AI into their learning and capability building efforts, what advice would you offer them to, just get started with it?
Yeah, beyond experimenting and, piloting different programs, I would say as a learning leader, it's imperative for you to understand the technology that's out there. So you always want to stay educated on what's out there, what's in the industry, what are those things, the technology that you can leverage, because when you need it, you want to be able to have it at your fingertips to implement it, just like we did with Tiger Hall. So I didn't spend months of having to assess different programs and different work with different vendors and things like that. I had already done that. And so being able to have that knowledge at your fingertips and then implement it when you need it is, extremely beneficial.
Indeed. And talking about having knowledge at fingertip, and we also talked about ChatGPT. One common question or rather concern which most people have around such AI models is the privacy concerns and challenges. So now the question would be, how do you balance innovation with caution when you experiment with technologies like ChatGPT? So if you could share any lessons which you must have learned or advice for organizations who are looking to incorporate these models into their capability building efforts.
Yeah, I think most important is to really understand what the policies are for your organization and make sure that you are setting yourself and your organization up for success, because you don't want to put your company at risk of using different applications that your company has not vetted out. So that is absolutely first priority. But once you know what options there are out there in your organization, immerse yourself, take advantage of it. We have Copilot that we're leveraging, and our team is doing extensive training around that, just so we can really understand the options that are out there and be able to leverage it, because the company's already paid for it, they've already approved it. Like, you want to make sure that you keep that curiosity and continually look for opportunities within your company to be able to leverage all the great tools and technology that are out there.
Indeed, and we can see that you have pioneered a multi-year capability building plan. So what are the key components of this initiative, and how do you ensure that it aligns with both organizational goals as well as customer needs?
Okay, so another great question here. I would say, when you look at building a multi-year capability building plan, you've got to understand what those skills are in the industry that are most needed. What gaps do you have in your organization to upskill those folks so they can make sure that you're the most competitive? And then how do you keep people who maybe have been in their positions for a long time? You want to make sure that you're continuing to invest in them as well. So we have this multi-year capability building plan, and we have foundational, intermediate, and advanced training. And so it sounds really complex. It kind of is, but It's our way to make sure that we're meeting the learners where they're at and making sure that we're upskilling them. So if there's, any type of gap there, that we're identifying it, and we're looking at those skills that are needed for the future. And so that's really important to assess the organization, know where you need to take the organization, and also where you need to go to make sure that you've got those advanced skill sets that you need. And so there's a lot to it, but you really need to make sure that you're meeting the learners where they're at so they can continue to evolve and be upskilled in the organization.
Indeed, and that's very important. So with your experience in designing diverse curricula, from omnichannel leadership to negotiation, how do you prioritize what skills are most essential for today's commercial teams?
Yeah, so I work extensively in the industry, in the CPG industry in particular, so I can understand those skills that are really needed for, long-term success. And I really focus in on those skills to make sure that our organization has those skills. And so, if I think about it, the hot skills that are needed over the next few years, the really important relevant skills are around data, being very analytical. So, you've got all of these insights and data at your fingertips. It's the so what of the data that you need to be able to digest. And then you need to be good storytellers, or like we like to say, communicate with influence. Because whether you're trying to take that data and either upsell to a retailer, whatever that is, you've got to be able to communicate with influence. So whether it's internal, external, really be able to tell your story on the powerful data that we have at our fingertips. That is key. That is so extremely important.
And indeed, considering the disruptive economy we are in, knowing where your customer stands is really important so as to cater to them properly, right? So yes. How do you identify where your learners currently stand and pinpoint the gaps in their knowledge or skill? And then what are the specific things which you do to effectively close these gaps to ensure that there's meaningful and impactful learning outcomes?
Yeah, so a great way is to do assessments. There's free assessments out there online as well that you can leverage yourself. You can buy a book, the Clifton Strength Finder book. It gives you a code. You can assess your skills. There's so many different ways that you can assess your skill. And that's what we do to identify, where the skill gap is and where the opportunity is. The other thing I would say is, talk to your mentor, talk to your coach, your manager, and make sure that, hey, these are the opportunities I see. Can you help me with that? Because these are the skills I really want to build. And how do I do that? Do you put me on a development assignment? After a meeting, if say I'm trying to really build to be more strategic, I might talk to someone and say, hey, I'm going into this meeting that you're going to be in. This is what I'm working on. Could you give me feedback after the meeting on what worked well and what could be even better if? And that way you can be working on those skill gaps that you have and really be able to make a difference. It's those micro learning moments of feedback that you can give, that gift of feedback that is extremely important. So going all the way back to your question, it's really around assessing and knowing where you're at.
Indeed, and considering that you have been, at the core of building high performance teams that can change, adapt and change with the changing times. And I can see that that's also the theme of your career. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge in fostering agility within an organization? And how do you help teams overcome it?
So this question is great because, you want to be on a high performing team that is very agile. In today's world, we all have to be agile. Given any of these circumstances, like I talked about right at the beginning with the big change our company went through, you have to be able to be agile and pivot. So the way I like to set the team up is, first of all, you've got to have a shared vision. And for me, it's our learning and development value proposition. That is our guide. It actually tells us the what and the how we need to do. It links back to our overall company strategy and to our functional strategy. So this guides us. If we do anything and it does not link back to our value proposition, we should not be doing it. So have a cleared value proposition. The next thing that I would say is around cross-functional capabilities. So for our team, we all have experts that develop programs and facilitate programs, but the entire team knows enough that we could jump in and be able to help facilitate, help develop the program. So you've got to have those cross-functional trainings so the whole team understands a little bit about everything. They all don't have to be experts. And then I would say the last is around empowering your team. So you've got to be able to empower the team to make decisions, and that's how you build those agile teams, by having those three key pillars. And then the other thing that we do after every training execution, we use a framework that's so simple, and you all can use this framework. I'm telling you, it's so incredibly helpful. It's what worked well and what could be even better if. So think about the power of that. Think about if someone was able to give you that feedback after you presented or did something. Tell me what worked well, and then tell me what could be even better if. It's just a great way to be able to be agile, fix what didn't work, and move on.
That's such a good way of going ahead with our work, because sometimes we get fixated on what's working for us, but it's also important to know what's not working for us in order to, advance in what we are doing. So that's really great advice, which I personally will implement in my life for sure. So with that being said, we also talked about the social learning platform Tiger Hall. So could you tell us how did you implement these strategies which we discussed in its functioning, and how does it support agility and continuous learning culture which you are looking at?
Yeah, so literally it has short podcasts that are out there that are developed. It's about micro learning. So let's all be honest. I don't love to listen to an hour and a half, 3-hour podcast. I'm all about those short bursts of podcasts. I love to run and listen to an 18-minute podcast, or power walk, listen to, the more micro learnings. So within Tiger Hall, that's how a lot of this is built. So we're able to go in and really leverage that. Look, there's all kinds of podcasts that are out there that anyone can get to. You don't necessarily have to have a social learning platform. The key is to find those. LinkedIn's a great way to be able to get out there, listen to those podcasts, have that growth mindset, and continually learn day in and day out. So I think it's really important to make sure that we all have that growth mindset.
Indeed. And what I feel is that if you don't have the growth mindset, you might like after a certain point of time just become stagnant, and that's not what we want, considering the industry we are in and the industry which we are tackling, especially in a dynamic industry like CPG.
Absolutely.
So we have seen that you have successfully led change management efforts across functions like sales, customer service, and supply chain. So what are some of the key principles you follow when driving changes across these varied functions?
So I think the most important thing that you can do during a change is put yourself in the end user's shoes almost. So, how do you want people to think, feel based on this change? And honestly, we all want to know what's in it for us, right? There's this big change coming along, and how is that going to impact us? How is that going to impact our work? What am I going to start doing different, stop doing, change doing, continue to do? What does it mean to me? And so I think the most important thing that you can do when you're assessing change is to really understand the end user and how it's going to, what's that going to be like for that individual, and then be able to communicate that.
Correct. And I love this perspective, Tomissa, because understanding the audience, irrespective of the industry we are in, is the key. And that's what we are working for, right? To get the best out of our customers and provide the best to our customers. So it's truly insightful, honestly. And we can see that you have served as an advisor to Tiger Hall as well as Cornell University's Corporate Advisory Board. So what are some of the key trends in learning and leadership development that you believe will shape the upcoming decade?
Yeah, I really believe we talked about having that analytical skill set. I would also add on critical thinking and problem solving. You've got to understand how to think critically through things, and you want to be a problem solver, because there's nothing better than bringing to your manager, I've got this problem and here's how I see I'm going to solve it. What do you think? So be a problem solver. I think that's really important, and those will continue to be important skills over the next few years. From a leadership perspective, with just all the change going on around us, you need to continue to have compassion and then resilience, because with all the dynamic changes going around, you really have to focus in on being resilient. So I think those are really some of the top skills, from an individual contributor, from a leader, that you're going to need to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. And I am a big believer of the fact that tech is great, but nothing can ever replace your own ability and your own judgment. And when you mix it up with, a little empathy and resilience, that's what takes you a long way.
Yes, so well said.
Yeah. So, with your roles in these advisory capacities, how do you integrate the insights from academia and corporate world to enrich your organization's learning strategies?
Yeah, that's the power of having really good relationships, like with universities that do a lot of research, like Cornell University. We have access to professors that have just an enormous amount of research that we can leverage. And then we know the skills in the industry that are needed, and being able to really jointly come together and bring all that information together. That's the powerhouse. Those are game changers for us to make sure that we are building the right capability in the organization. So, it's powerful to be able to have, that information at your fingertips and be able to understand it and then build from it.
Indeed. Wow, we have started getting some questions as well, which we will be answering by the end of the session. And Tomissa, I must say that I could notice this make it happen spirit in you and that transformational drive. So what keeps you motivated to, push boundaries, and how do you hope your work in capability building and learning development will impact the next generation of leaders?
Well, I have a passion to develop people. So, I tell my team all the time, find a job that you love 80% of it. It's kind of that 80-20 rule where, you want to just get up in the morning and, seize the day because you really have a passion and love what you do. That is absolutely me. I love what I do. Now, there's always that 20% of the job that you don't love necessarily. So for me, don't tell anyone, it's the budget. But I love developing people. And so I spend a lot of time and focus area there. But it's kind of that 80-20 rule, honestly. Find something that you're passionate about. So 80% of the time, you are ready to rise and shine and seize the day because you just love it that much.
Indeed. And the idea of focusing on 80% of what I love rather than 100% of what I don't love is something which indeed instills a positive thinking in me already. Now I am already excited to go to work tomorrow. And I can see how it highlights the passion and purpose that can, shape impactful careers and transform change. So I think our audience will indeed start using the 80-20 rule now.
Now, I will add, there is through my career, honestly, there have been some roles that I've been in that I haven't absolutely loved. But what I can tell you is the learning that I got from those roles was so incredibly important. And I knew I didn't want to do that long term, but I needed that experience, that career experience, to get me to ultimately where I want to be. And so there are going to be times that you might get into a role that 80-20 is even a little bit more skewed because you need that critical experience. But just remember, you're going to eventually get back into a role that you are loving 80% of it.
Indeed. And I mean, what I could see is that throughout your career, you have been balancing and managing, what you love. And that has contributed to the long-term initiatives which you had. So that's indeed very inspiring. With that being said, with your advisory roles and extensive leadership experience, you're in a unique position to inspire the next generation. So how do you approach mentoring younger women professionals, especially in the male-dominated areas like supply chain and AI?
Yeah, first of all, I say have confidence. As women leaders, we need more confidence. So show up, be confident, because guess what? You know more than you really give yourself credit. I mean, that it's that way. That's just inherent of how we work. But show that confidence and be able to speak up and be able to give your point of view, because your point of view matters. That's what makes the whole conversation, the whole, ideas from everyone. We can learn from everyone, that diverse thought, the diverse ideas that, everyone brings to the table. Have a voice and be confident doing that, because you matter and your opinion matters.
Indeed, and that's such a strong message that I think so most women in tech should know, because most of the time we think that we have been overshadowed or maybe our opinions aren't heard. But it is important for females and women in tech to know that we are heard, we are seen, and our opinions actually genuinely matter. So that's
Yeah, keep showing up. That's my mantra. Keep showing up.
Indeed. So with that, I have few rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
So are you ready for that?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready. Here we go.
Okay, so what's one book that shaped your leadership style the most?
How Women Rise by Sally Hansen.
Oh wow. Okay, I'll definitely read that book. If you were in CPG, what industry do you think you'd be in? If you weren't in CPG, what industry do you think you would be in?
I'd be a teacher.
Oh wow, I can totally see that happening. Okay, one word your team would use to describe you?
Passionate.
Your go-to source for industry trends and updates?
A lot of different surveys, but LinkedIn is a great place.
Okay. Biggest mentor in your career journey?
My father.
Indeed. I truly relate to that answer because my father has been, the shaping stone of my life. So that's really connectable and relatable. So
we are definitely connected.
Yes. Women in tech after all. What's AI in one word for you?
Exciting.
Favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Exercise.
That's important. What's the best leadership quality in your opinion?
Resilience.
A recent technology trend that excites you the most?
Meta is getting ready to release these Orion glasses, and the translation that's there. I mean, there's so many great options with it. It's going to be game changing. I'm excited.
Correct. And especially I have been following that because I'm a big fan of Iron Man and he had these glasses. So that's one innovation I've been looking forward to. Yeah. So my last question from this rapid fire round would be, if you could master any new skill instantly, what would that be?
To write a book.
Okay, so our audience is really pumped up and they have sent a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
So the first question is, how can we align different priorities and viewpoints across diverse functions during this time of large-scale change?
Yeah, so I would go back to when you're looking at the priorities, it has to link back to the company priority and it has to link back to your functional priorities. So, if there's a lot of work coming in, obviously you want to prioritize to what those priorities that your leaders have set out. And that's where I love a shared vision because I can always go back to that. And then, what are those key priorities that are under that vision that's really going to meet the business where you need to? So, anytime you can impact an ROI and bring that back to the business, that's important. But from a priority standpoint, I mean, you should have a bigger picture that you're able to link back to, honestly.
Correct. Like there should be small nuances adding up to a big picture, right?
Right. And then I would say also, have those conversations with your manager to make sure that you are prioritizing the right task so you know that your work matters.
Indeed. The second question is, podcasts are something everyone at least tries to listen. So what are your topics and interests that you listen to regularly, or something which you would suggest to help change or assess things in personal or professional life?
Wow. Okay. There are so many great podcasts that are out there. whether it's leadership, whether it's like work-life balance. I love Mel Robbins from Work-Life Balance. I'm really getting into like the Huberman, the professor that's out there, and a lot of the research that he's bringing around health. I also love to make sure that I'm keeping my own skill sets really relevant. So I'm looking at, strategy, making sure I stay very strategic. There's an incredible amount of podcasts and things that are out there. Like, you could go to my LinkedIn profile and you could even look on what I'm connected with, because there are so many great authors that are out there that you can learn from.
Indeed. And I mean, technology has a really big hand in that, because everything has just become so accessible, especially for our generation. And we are literally in the mid of information. It's just that we should know what we need to get and what we need to pick. So for podcast suggestions, you could visit Tomissa's LinkedIn. So the next question is, how can companies ensure AI-driven learning platforms align with diversity and inclusion efforts?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is one reason I chose Tiger Hall, because it was extremely diverse, and some of the previous platforms that we used were not. And so I wanted to make sure that we had that diversity of thought and ideas, and to be able to listen to leaders all over the world. And that's why I picked that platform, because I think that's incredibly important. That's even important when you build teams and things like that, to have, that whole diversity lens, because it's so amazing to learn from anyone, anywhere, anytime, and you want to be able to have that at your fingertips. So there's nothing better than surrounding yourself with such a diverse, bright group of people. It's super important.
Indeed. With that being said, the next question actually is in tune with what you said right now. How do you balance personal growth with organizational demands? And what advice would you give to emerging leaders about it?
Yes, so here's what I'll say, and this is what I practice. It's micro learnings. And so every single day, if you can spend 15 minutes or a half an hour. Look, this is what I love to do. The sun isn't out in Michigan all the time. That's where I live. But I love to get that circadian rhythm when the sun is coming up, to be outside, listen to podcasts, listen to, whether it's a book, whatever I'm doing. But I love to be grounded first thing in the morning, get exercise, get sunlight, and learn. And it only takes you can do it in 15 minutes if you have to. Literally, that is a great way to start your day. And you don't necessarily have to start your day. You can end your day like that. But it's small micro learning moments that you guys are going to add up to big results over time.
Correct. And I think most of the times what people do is that since they aren't seeing any short-term gains, they just happen to miss the bigger picture as discussed before. So I think so with this advice, all the people who are interested to join the gym, New Year is also around the corner. You can do that now. Okay, so the next question is, in time of constant organizational change, how can leaders ensure that they stay resilient while adapting their strategies?
Yeah, I think it's really important, number one, to stay grounded. Number two, to have work-life balance. And so, you want to be able to have the energy to show up every single day. And in order to do that, I know some days are really tough. But for the most part, you want to try to really prioritize your sleep, your health, things like that, because then you're going to be a better performer. You're going to be a better leader. So make sure that you're trying to keep balance for your whole life. And that's not always easy, but, every day you need to decide, how you're going to show up and what that's going to look like, based on where you want to go, what you want to do.
Correct. I mean, that's actually really important. With that, we have the last question, which is, with the rise of generative AI, what are the potential risks and how can organizations proactively manage them in learning strategies?
So from a risk standpoint, it's really important that you are making sure that you're lock in step with your IT organization for anything that you want to do. And because that's going to set you up, for success, and it's going to make sure that you are being safe around what you're searching, things like that. So I would say really understanding those company policies are extremely important from a risk perspective. And then, what was the second part of that question?
How can organizations proactively manage them, specifically in learning strategies?
Yeah, and so I think it's important to understand what those key skills are that you need for your role to be able to focus on those and be able to upskill. So understand what your company's expectations are and really understand for yourself, what you want to continue to progress on, and make sure that you're constantly staying focused. Because if I think about the learnings, the career experiences, it's ultimately, where do I want to go from a career perspective? And what are those things that I need to do to eventually get myself there? That's where I would stay focused on those learnings and making sure that you're able to get yourself to ultimately where you want to go.
Indeed. Tomissa, I must say that the passion and the vigor which you carry is really contagious and inspiring for aspiring women in tech and for people like me who have just started in their career, and who, I must say that when a woman enters in tech, obviously first what people see is a male dominant industry, but then we are so thankful to have people like you to change that perspective. So thank you so much for contributing towards people and contributing towards women. And thank you for instilling that confidence in us that yes, we do stand a chance, and yes, we do exist. We are seen and we are heard in this industry. So thank you so much for instilling that confidence and that thinking rather in us.
I'm so glad if that resonated and came through, because you all matter, and having a voice at the table, and like we talked about, making sure that you've got that confidence, like you've got this.
Indeed. So for our audience, if you have any questions or thoughts which you want to share, feel free to drop them at marketing@polestar.com. And we are also super active on our LinkedIn, so don't hesitate to reach out to us, and feel free to connect with Tomissa. Our LinkedIn profiles would be dropped in the comment box, and we'll be more than happy to share our perspectives and have a conversation with you. And with that, Tomissa, it was really an honor to have this conversation with you, and I've learned so much from being passionate to what I do, to having the 80-20 love your job rule. That's really gonna stick with me and our audience as well. And I really thank you for taking the time out to come and talk, rather inspire us to be the better persons which we are going to be after this session. Thank you so much for taking out the time. It was absolutely an honor.
Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate it.